From the punishing jungle of Tropic Regions Test Center, this is Outpost Outspoken. Outpost Outspoken is the official podcast of U.S. Army Human Proving Ground, which conducts natural environment testing of military equipment in Arizona, Alaska, and the tropics. Hello, I'm Mark Schauer. Julio Villegas has nearly a quarter century of IT experience and has worked with Tropic Regions Test Center for nearly 2 decades. He learned quickly that the same complexities that inform testing military equipment in a tropical environment apply to safeguarding the electronic instrumentation used in tests. Julio, how did you first hear about Tropic Regions Test Center?
I was at the university at that time. There was another student that his father and he by himself, they work on tropics, and they were looking for an electronics IT person to back him up when he was not available during TDY, and here I am.
And that was 17 years ago.
17 years ago.
And so you're an electronics engineer, you do the IT work and all the electronics.
I am a graduate electronics engineer, but my major experience is on IT and cybersecurity. So I have been working on IT for more than 17 years now. I'm talking about 23 years maybe on IT and cybersecurity. So I get here as IT person, and I get as the electronics now.
And you've been on every major test at Tropic Regions Test Center since you started here.
I've been since every time you deploy a group, you need to have on hand IT personnel available. And I have been either doing that or in other matters. I mean, I have been data collector, I have been operator for equipment, I have been the IT person in charge, I have been electronics for the handling of the med stations. Now in Panama and for tropics, I'm the med stations or the instrumentation person.
There's a lot of very sophisticated electronic equipment used in the testing, and we're out in the middle of the jungle. That must be challenging to set up IT networking and so on in the middle of nowhere.
It is. Somehow you have different challenges than what you have in Yuma. For example, you have the humidity, you need to take care of, you need actually waterproof things, not just weatherproof things, which is not the same. And not only that, but you have interaction with insects and mildew and other things that grow up and can kill your equipment. And for example, with the med stations are waterproof seal boxes that keeps all the electronics inside, and you have a hard time trying to get rid of ants that make nest inside of the box because it's a waterproof enclosed place, which is a perfect place for a nest. But you don't want nest being growing up on your electronics. So that's a challenge thing, yeah.
And to set this up, very remote parts of the jungle, all over South America too, wherever the test might be.
Yes, and Suriname and Panama, we have, let's mention the med stations. We have a large that are used mainly for exposure testing, because in exposure testing you need to be able to know what are your weather parameters during the whole exposure period, not only how much rain you have, but humidity, temperature, solar radiation, wind direction, etc., that will affect that corrosion, that degradation of the material. So that's key part of those med stations, is to have that data that is used for the exposure testing.
And these exposure tests usually last months or even years.
The exposure testing is for years. Longer the better, and depends always from the client and the material. It is a minimum of 1 year to 5 to 10 years project. So you need to deal with the maintenance schedule for those sensors, calibration schedule for those sensors to be able to have available something to replace something that broke. There is different environments. There are environments like the coastal environment that we have here in Panama that is a highly corrosive environment. Then your sensors last a quarter of the time that they will last anywhere else, and you need to deal with that. And one of the first times I get involved when I get that project, the Med Station project, was to establish a network, a communication network between the stations and a centralized data collection center that could serve to acquire all that data without needing someone to go there weekly or bi-weekly to collect that data.
Now, in your spare time, you engage in Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments?
Not tournaments. I actually do a online game. It's a computer game of Yu-Gi-Oh. I get that from my brother. My brother used to work in one of those game stores that do like Dungeons and Dragons and card exchange games, and I actually enjoy it.
Julio Villegas, thanks so much for visiting with us today.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Like their counterparts throughout Yuma Proving Ground's 3 constituent test centers, personnel at Tropic Regions Test Center tend to stay for the long term. Robert Dunn, a Florida State University alumnus who grew up in Panama, is likely closer to the beginning of his tenure at TRTC than the end. We spoke with him about the test center as seen through the eyes of a beginner. So Robert, you've been here close to a year now. What's your impression so far of TRTC?
It's got an amazing, amazing history that I really would like to see develop a little bit more. I think that what I think some of the people are looking here forward to, which I guess is good in different respects, but the conflict in the South China Sea looks to be tropical, which would boost the need for testing in the tropics, and I think it's a very harsh environment that is very particular, just like testing in the desert or testing up north would be, but each one has a very specific set of challenges for equipment. Stuff definitely breaks down here very, very quickly, and especially by the ocean with the humidity. Everything that's electronic kind of goes bazonkers pretty quick. So it's an interesting set of challenges that I think that would be helpful for the military to, find solutions for.
Now, it interests me that you had heard of Tropic Regions Test Center prior to working here. A lot of folks had never heard of it prior to working here or in Yuma or in Alaska, but you were familiar with it.
Yeah, I read a book while I was at FSU called Emperors in the Jungle, and it kind of specifically looked at the history of the U.S. in Panama, starting with the railroad and moving forward to basically, that particular book goes right around to 1999, but Tropic Regions Test Center did a lot of work here through many different periods of time. But yeah, there was the different periods of it, looking at it from the 30s, later on to the 50s, and then going on to the Vietnam War, where stuff really seemed to heat up over here. And a lot of stuff that was designed here was definitely used over in Vietnam to great success, and probably saved a lot of lives. So I think that part was very beneficial.
You grew up in the Panama Canal Zone days.
So officially the zone ended in 1979. I was born in 84. So I grew up in the transition period as the U.S. was handing the canal over to Panama. So it was kind of winding down the whole time. I'm growing up, everything's kind of just slowly disappearing. The U.S. influence here is just less and less and less and less. The zone is the people that I knew that grew up in the zone period had a very different experience. They thought it was going to last forever, I grew up knowing that it was slowly disappearing. So it was kind of a different...
Now, you had an interesting job after Florida State. You worked for Survivor for a few seasons here in Panama?
Yeah, that was kind of in between. I took some breaks from college. They did a few seasons here in 2003, and then later on in 2005, they did 2 seasons here. And I got to work with them, originally testing out their challenges, and then later building the challenges for their art department out in the Pearl Islands. But it was from building a labyrinth in the middle of an island with no infrastructure, to a drive-in movie theater, to an Ewok village, to building a Spanish castle, a mock Spanish castle. So everything was kind of new, and getting a lot of people to work together in some extreme environments, and setting up a town kind of that didn't have infrastructure all of a sudden to handle 350 people, and winding it all down. So that was interesting for sure.
It might have some applicability to your future things you're going to be doing here at Tropic Regions.
Yeah, I think it does to get the logistics and the difficult places. I think it does have some similarities.
Now, you're active in the community too. You're a Boy Scout leader.
My kid is in Bear Scouts. He just finished Wolf Scouts, so that's like the third grade program for him. And then I'm their Cub Master, and he's actually part of the same pack that I grew up being part of. Yeah, I really enjoy spending time with my kid, and then trying to in a controlled environment. Show him how to use a knife, show him how to camp, how to cook, doing the whole Boy Scout experience, and then sharing that with the other kids. It's a very cool program.
Do you expect you're going to stay with TRTC for a while?
I hope so. Yeah, my current plan is to do so, yes.
That's good. It was really good chatting with you today.
Likewise.
This has been Outpost Outspoken. Thank you again for listening. We'll see you next time from the Army's busiest test center.